Okay, so today we will be talking about more form. We already talked about a little bit about forms, what they are, how to use, how to set up, things like that. And today we're going to talk about more about forms and how to do how to create advanced form where it accepts different types of inputs. Not only we already talked about the inputs for like the text and things like that, but we'll talk about now a little bit more about the other inputs like selection, drop down selection, and checkbox and things like that. And then how to take that and then submit that form to an API and use a Axios post. So we'll go through that. Most of it will be kind of like a review for the last one, where we set up the form, but not most of it, some of it. And you will see a lot of validation, form validation, making sure the what you are like basically sending is the right data and things like that. So we'll go over that and touch on a lot of parts about that. So today, at the end of this lecture, you should be able to explain and understand control forms and form inputs, such as checkbox and dropdown in custom forms. You should be able to validate user inputs in forms, and you should be able to send a post requests to pass the data collected from the form to a database. We will be using a fake database. There's a website called Regress that gives us a fake database. Okay. So you already understand how forms work. You understand how to set up and things like that. So I'll quickly go ahead and set up a basic React app, which we have here. And this will be a volunteer form. So, sorry, it will be volunteer form. So I'll just paste that. And also we'll have another component called form. Just for now, we'll just remove it for now. So we have that now. Let's see if this renders. I'm not sure why it's not rendering. Yeah, rendered. Okay, so this is what we will have. And then we'll set up the form and then submit it and things like that. Let me change the CSS to something that I created a little custom CSS. Save that. It's just going to change the background for us. Let's see. Jamal, welcome, bro. We're going through a lecture today. By the way, Jamal is he's also a developer. He's one of my friends. He lives in UK. Alaikum salam, bro. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Mashallah, mashallah. Welcome, bro. Welcome. We're going through the lecture, inshallah. When we finish, we can talk if you're around, inshallah.
Inshallah.
All right, bro. So yeah, I'm just gonna change the CSS a little bit. It's not gonna change too much. All the CSS is connected to the form, so it's gonna change how the form is gonna look like. Then we're gonna create another. We're just gonna create components. So this is kind of like the tradition where if you want to, and let me know if you cannot see it clearly. I'm gonna try to zoom it in as much as I can. Traditionally, and let me just open this into a new browser. Let me see if I can do that. I'll toggle this to okay, so I can, yep. So you could just have it here and we could focus here on the code. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to create that. Traditionally, as you know, React, when you want to create other components, it's best to create a component folder. And here I'm just going to create another component called form.js. So this form.js is where we put all the form related stuff. So let me just basically create a simple basic React component. from React. I'll say function, call it form. It will eventually accept, no, it will not accept props. So we can skip props and return. And here we will return some JSX. All right. So you guys already know all about this. This would be something like h2 form here. On h2. Okay. And then we export. Always export your component. Export default form. Save that. And now we're gonna go to here, and then we can import it here. So we'll say form, and then it can automatically import for us, as you can see. Let's save that. Save. If we open it here, right there. So let's zoom in. All right. So so we have the form here. We're gonna do the setup for the basic form, but I'm just gonna since you guys already know how to set up a form, I'm gonna try to let's actually do it so that you guys have understanding again, so you can see again how I set up. So this is going to be just like the HTML since you guys know. So instead of this, we're just gonna replace it. We could just replace the div even with form. So form. Okay. Form here. We'll add a lot of things here. We'll add a couple of things related to the submit, and also we'll add a couple of inputs. So the first input we will add in is the name. We're gonna add a name here. So we're gonna say, let's add a label first. So label. We'll add we'll add HTML4 here. This is just this is for React. The normal HTML, it says 4, but React says HTML4. But you could also skip this. It's best. It's a good practice to use this as much as you can. And here will be name, and this will be label. Okay, and I'll just create input. And input. I'm used to VS Code shortcuts. So input, I'll give it an ID of name, since we set HTML4. The way to connect that is using the ID. So this is kind of like a practice for you, since we already went through this. And name would be name. I will also add, so we'll keep at that. We'll add a value and onChange functionality, but for now we just keep it at that. And this is a self-closing. Okay, so let's add a couple of more. The next one is, let's add email. And we just change it here, email. And email here. Okay, and also let's add, so this would be a text area. So we're going to be adding a couple of more inputs, so you guys have all the options. Later when you practice, doing your assignment, you can practice with this. So we're going to call it text area. So this is like a bigger box. So text area will give it a name. Let's call it something like motivation. Motivation. Okay. And let's close that with the text area. It's a self-closing. Okay. All right. So on this one, did we give it a label? Okay, let's give it a label. I'll just copy the label here. Okay, and actually the way we do in the label now is we can enclose the whole input with the label. So we can do this too. This is another option too you could do. So you could do that. You could enclose the whole input within the label. So that's another option. All right. Also, let's add a label for the text area. And if you are confused about anything, let me know anytime. Here will be label. Okay, so this is the text area. The next thing we'll add is let's add the drop down, the selection. So the selection I'm gonna copy because it's gonna be a lot to write it down. So I'm just gonna copy the selection for now. I'm gonna clean it up so you guys can understand what is in there. So this is the drop down. It's positions. So what would you like to help with? So this is a volunteer. So you're basically we're asking what would you like to help with. Let's remove this on change, and let's keep the rest the same. And let's close it with the label. So as you can see here, we have a label. We called the label. What would you like to help with? What would you like to help with? Yeah. And then selection will give it ID, a position, because we have the HTML4, and then the name, positions. We have first option, which is the first thing you see before you make any selection. Please choose an option. And then the next option would be a value of newsletter. The next one would be a value of yard work. The other one would be a value of admin work. And the last one would be a value of tabling. So those are the options that we have. So now, if we actually save this and go back here, you see that we have all these inputs. So the name, email, the text area, and the dropdown. It's not connected to any React right now, but we will do that. We'll connect everything together. The last thing before the button would be a checkbox. So we need a checkbox. The checkbox, let's give it it's a terms of use or terms of agreement. So let's give it a label, HTML4. Let's call it terms, and we'll give all this like classes and things like that. Let's give them this one a class name. So this one is the CSS class name of terms. This one's more specific. Okay. So now this one, we're gonna use an input. This input will have a type of checklist, checkbox. And this checkbox is part of the HTML checkbox input. If you go anywhere right here. So this is the checkbox we're talking about. And this is how you do a checkbox. So it's part of the already existing HTML elements. All right. So type is checkbox. Let's give it a name of terms. And let's we will talk about the condition of is it checked or is it not checked? How do we know? Let's close the label here. And before we close the label, we give the label because we want the button, the checkbox to be before the text, before the name of the text. Just like this one, the text is after the checkbox, not before it. So that's what we're doing. And we'll call it here terms and conditions. Terms and conditions, and then close the label like that. The last thing would be the button. So for this basic form, we'll be adding a lot about React and how to, how we can connect this to the state. So let's just add a button, normal button. And this button will have a type of submit for now. And we'll just call it submit. and it will have a closing button. All right, so if we go back to our form, as you can see now, it looks great. It has the terms of condition. It's a normal HTML right now. So if I submit something here, and I add something here, select something here, checkbox, submit, it will just refresh the page. And that's all it does. And it also added the information at the top here. This is called post, but it's part of the HTML. So it's not part of React right now. So we have a basic form. This is all we need. We have checkbox, we have dropdown, the selection, and we have text area. So we can work with this. And the hardest one is checkbox, because it needs its own state. So is it checked or is it not checked or something like that, you know? So now let us go back here and set up the state for this form. So this form, the state is basically the condition of the form. What condition is it? So right now we can set up an empty state. So let's call it we can call it form state, and then this one will be set form state. Form state, and we'll be using use state. Of course, we can import automatically like that, and then we'll set this an empty array. So that will be our starting state. This is where we're gonna put all the result from the inputs right here. We're gonna put in this state. So that will be our starting point. Okay. So the next thing is we need to initialize the form. So we need to initialize it as a basically, if the form is empty or not, we need to initialize it in this state. So and everywhere else, we could put here a empty initialization here, or we could just create just a basic basic object. So we'll call it something like initial form state. So this would be how the form is at the beginning. So this is going to be empty. So we're going to give it a name, empty. We're going to give it a email, empty, leave it empty. We're going to give it motivation. And these are all the inputs that we have in our form. So you have to have this so you can work with it later. You could reset it. You could like use this as like a blueprint basically. And positions, and this will be empty, and then the last one will be terms. Okay, and this would be empty too. And this would be probably like a false or true at the end. So we'll get there. So we initialized. So when we do that, we could just replace this empty array with this. So we just put it right here. So we could do that. So we can initialize that way, or we could just replace this with here. But we're going to be reusing this, so it's best to put it up here, so we can use it later for other things. Okay. So that is the state. The next thing we need to do is we need to set up so that there's a lot of things we can do. We need to do we need to create a use effect to submit the form, basically to know if the form is valid or not. And we will be using a validation package that I will introduce to you. Also, we need to basically create the schema for the validation. We'll see that. So don't worry about this. It sounds confusing right now, but when we get to it, it looks easier. Let me just import Axios for now. Axios. And Axios, we use it to grab the API, and we'll be using a fake API to set up our to send the data basically, and then it gives the data back to us. But the most important thing about the form is we need to control the form. So remember how we, at the beginning, the first lesson, we talked about how when you submit the form, we don't want the form to kind of refresh. So when you submit it, we don't want it to refresh. We want it to stay in the page. And that's for React. React controls the form. So let's do that. And we call that handle change. We could call a handle change if we want here. So let's create that. Let's create that function. So we'll just use an arrow function. We'll call it handle change. And handle change will have the event. So basically anything that comes back from the form. So anything that we submit, and this would be an arrow function. So in here, we need to do a couple of things. So remember how I told you guys last time, you just have to have a way that you can capture every input of the form. You could capture one by one. You could like grab the name, you could grab the email, you could do that. But you could also do it all at once. Basically, you could give a generic name to all of them, and that generic name will be will allow you to capture any input. So let's do that. Let's start with a variable. Let's call it something like new form data. You could call it whatever you want. And this will be an object. This object, we need to first grab the initial state. So this is the initial state. So we need to grab that. So when you grab the state, you cannot change the state. You cannot modify it. So we have to copy it. To copy it, we use something called, who remembers what this is called? We went through last time. Who remembers it? The three dots.
It's spread operator.
Spread operator. So spread operator just copies the initial state, which is now just these empty things. So it copies the state, and now we're going to add something new to it. And this is how we add it. And we went through last time this. So we just say event.target.name. This is every form that you create. This is how you target the form. Basically, this is what this is targeting the name of each input. So each input has a name that we created for it. Right? See, this one has terms. This one has positions right here. This one has motivation, I think, motivation. This one has a name. So it targets basically the name of each input. And then since this is basically an object, the value for this is the key, and the value for that is the value of the form. We didn't add the value yet. We will add it in a minute. So let's choose that. So there's two things though. One thing is we have one thing that doesn't have a value. So the checkbox doesn't have a value. We cannot add a value to it because the value of this input, or this input, is just either checked or not checked. So it's not a value. It's just a condition, a situation, either checked or not checked. So we need to also tackle this, but also tackle all this. So we can first tackle just the basic one that we already know. So let's do that. So we'll say event.target.value. So this is the one you guys already know, the one we went through. And later on, when we go through everything, we will change this so that we can also tackle the checkbox. Okay. So let's keep it at this one. So now we're basically capturing the value of each input, but we don't have a value. So let's add a value to each one of them. So we'll say value here. And the value would be, of course, would be the state. So we will say form dot state, and we could destructure this, as you guys remember. So we could say this name. So that would be the value for this one, and the value for this one. And usually when you're using React, it's best to like kind of like do it like this, in the new lines for each thing in the input. So it's a little bit more organized. And here value is form state. So this would be the state, and this would be email. And also we have to add later on change, and that will be another function. No, actually handle change, the function we're just creating right now. We have to add it. So let's add the value now, and then we'll add that. The text area. So we could just do this and add the value here. Of course, the text area would be form state dot motivation. Okay, and this one is the checkbox, the dropdown. The dropdown would be value is equal to. So here's the thing about the dropdown. The dropdown has already a value, so it has this value right here. That will be newsletter. This value here, news. It will have the yard work. So it has all the values already. So we don't need to add a new value. It already has multiple values here. Okay. So now what we need to do is, and this one doesn't have a value because it's a checkbox. So now we can console log this. Let's console log this new form data. Let's console log it. Save. We don't have console log anywhere else, so we might actually have error too, but let's see. So we have a couple of errors here. What is this? Console log. What did I do there? Okay, it kind of changed a little bit, but that's fine. Unexpected token of line 18. Oh, okay. So this one, what's wrong with this? Console log, is that how it's spelled? Console log new form data. So we have that. Let me just repeat this again. So this is the function, and this is the object. We could just console log it. What's wrong with it? New form data. I don't see any issues. Okay, shouldn't give us an issue. So now if we type anything here, it should show here. Oh, it will not allow us type. Okay. Oh, that's because we didn't connect this handle changes to anywhere. So let's at least do for this. I don't even know why it's doing this. It's created a new line here. So we'll just go with it. We'll say on change. So when we change anything from this input, we need to go to this function, the handle change. So we'll just call it handle change right here. So that, no, it's curly bracket. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Let's see. Basically changing the whole. It's changing the whole thing when we save it. So let's go to settings, text editor, formatting, format as safe. We don't want that. So yeah. Okay. And by the way, guys, the Code Sandbox uses they use VS Code in the background. So it's basically VS Code in the cloud. So save it, and now if we change anything from the first input, which has the handle change. As you can see, it's basically, it's not changing anything. Let's see. So form state, event.target, event.target.value. Okay. And we're not adding it to the state. So that's where the problem is coming from. So let's add it to the state so we can see the change, the basic change, like what we just did. So this change, we need to add it to the state so that it keeps track. Otherwise, it replaces each time we make a change. So it's not gonna work. So let's do that. I lost track of my notes. Okay. So we're just gonna say set form state, and then we're just gonna give the new form data right there. So that's all we need to do for now. We need to add more stuff, but that's the first step. Okay, so refresh now. So now, as you can see, it's keeping track of the data. It's keeping the data for us. So, and also underneath here, as you can see, it's adding more. And this is how the state is keeping track of everything. But these ones don't have anything, so we need to add the on change on all of them. Okay, so handle change here. Let's just keep it the way it is. It's too much hassle. And here, we can add it right here. And here we can add it right here. Okay, save that. So now this one works fine. The email works fine. And the text area works fine. And the last thing would be the dropdown. So when we change something, it should give us that. So the position would be admin work. And then we change it, Taplin, we change it to newsletter, it changes. So all that is working for us. So that's great. So now we sent all the data to the state, and we could also console log the state, which is right here, if we want to, but you guys have seen this before. Okay, so we don't need this console log anymore. So we have the data in the state. The next thing is the checkbox. The checkbox, how do we handle the checkbox? So the checkbox, it needs to have the handle change itself. Let's see. It needs to have the handle change, and also it needs to have a condition where it's checked. So if we go back here, as you can see here, I don't know how to change this, but this input is a checkbox. At the end of it, it says checked. This is the condition. So if we refresh, the first one says checked, as you can see here. The second one doesn't have any checked. This checked means this box is checked. So we need to basically grab this and then set it to the state, right? So that's what we need to do. We set it to state, and then that's how we grab it. And then we have to change our handle change to accommodate for that, because we only have a value in our handle change. So we need to change that too. So let's do it. Let's go back here. In here, we say checked. Go down here. We say checked. When the condition is checked, then we say set it to the state. So we say form state dot terms, and then also we have to add our on change handle change. On change is equal to handle change. Okay. So now if we save it and we go back to here, we refresh it and go down and we check it. It's stuck in check. So now that's why we need to change it here, because we didn't ask the handle changer to do anything. So now we need to change this value to something that I don't think you guys have seen before. It's called ternary. Let's see, ternary. It's in JavaScript. Ternary operator. I think you guys have seen it when we were doing JavaScript. So ternary is basically a if statement, but in one line, right? So if statement in one line. So don't confuse it by anything. It's just if statement, but you just do it in one line. So ternary operator, a condition ternary operator is only a JavaScript operator that takes 3 operands, a condition followed by a question mark, then an expression to execute if the condition is truly followed by a column, and final expression. So an example would be, so this function is checking if these people, if the person is a member. If they're a member, then give them $2. If they're not member, charge them $2. If they're not member, charge them $10. So basically what you're saying is you're grabbing this this term and you're saying, are they a member? And then you're saying, if this question mark is if they are a member, if this is true, basically, if a member is true, then charge them 2. If not, then you use a column, then charge this, right? It's a very, very condensed if statement, and it's very powerful, and it's used in all over React and JavaScript. So keep that in mind. That's what we're going to use. Don't think too much of it. It is literally a an if statement, and basically what I'm saying here is if the target that name is, let's say, a checkbox, or not checkbox, if it's a term, then let me see. Let me just grab the actual input. I keep losing track of my notes because I wrote down so many notes. Okay, so here we're gonna say if the type. Okay, so here we're gonna say we're just gonna delete this for now, and in here we're gonna say event dot target dot type. Remember, the type is part of the inputs. So type either text or other things. So if the type is equal to, we'll say checkbox. I mean checkbox. This is the last thing that we have here is the checkbox, and the type is checkbox. If that is the case, right? Where is it? So if that's the case, okay, then we will say, if that's true, basically, then we will say event dot target dot checked, right? So we're basically saying if this is true, if the type is checkbox, then go ahead and change the check. So make it kind of like toggle it. Otherwise it's event dot target dot value, right? So that's how simple it is. Basically, if this is true, this condition, if it's true, then run this. If not, run this. And that's how ternary operators work. So let me know if you're confused about that. I can go back and kind of reevaluate. So as you can see now, it's doing that for us. And also if we console log it like before, console log, we can console log the state, or we can console log view form data is the same thing. And we refresh this, you will see that it's going to change here. So it says now true here, terms. If we uncheck it, it says false, right? And that true and false is coming from here. So it's either, so this condition is either false or true, right? So it's either false or true. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, ternary operators are always confusing, so don't think too much of it. Think of it, this is an if statement. All right. So that was the checkbox. So we did the checkbox. And then we need to add one more thing to the handle change. This is the function. Okay, I was just looking at my notes. No problem. We'll come back to it. So now we took care of the handle change. Now we can change everything in here, and it shows in the state. Basically, it shows in the state, and if we add something here like that, so we're all good when it comes to handle change. All right. So the next thing would be we need to submit the form. So to submit the form, we need to add a on submit here. So on submit, and we need to create a function for this. So we're going to call it form submit. Right? We have to create this form, this function, and it takes everything when you submit it. So let's do that. So basically, this on submit is where we send the data, and that's where the API comes. So the API we're sending the data to, right? So, but before I move on, any question about the handle change? Any question about the handle change?
How many handle changes are we gonna put in? Like
Just
10?
one handle change. We're gonna create one handle change, and then each input that you have, it's gonna take a. It has to take a handle change. The handle change, right? So this function takes care of every time you change any input, right? It grabs the value of whatever you put in, and then it sends it to the state, right? Would that make sense? So it grabs the data that you submitted, and it sends it to the state, and the state is right here. You could console log it, and you'll see that whatever you submitted is right there. All right, so let's do the form submit. We'll do it right here. So this would be another function. We can have it as a normal function. Just say function form submit. This will take event itself, and we will add. This will be where we will handle the API, right? But before we do anything, just like last lecture, who remembers what do we need to do before we submit a form? What is one thing that React has that HTML doesn't have? Basic HTML. Before we submit, what do we need to do? As you can see, every time I submit, it refreshes, right? How do we stop that refreshing?
Oh, prevent default.
Prevent default, yes. So the first thing you need to do is when you submit a form, you have to prevent the default. And I explained this several times. The prevent default is a method that's already in the DOM in the browser, and it allows us to do something without the page refreshing, right? So we take the data, the event, the information that we get, and we could do something with it without the page refreshing, right? So in here, we could just say console log event, right? So we can console log event, and we could go here, could add the stuff here, and we will add a validation so that this has to be an email, so that there will be no way around it. And then let's open the console. We have a problem here, but let's submit. As you can see, we submitted, and as you can see, there's a lot of information here. There is on submit, the time when it was submitted, a lot of things. So now it's not passing any data because we haven't added any, we haven't basically sent any data yet. So let me see. Okay. So submit target, yeah. So the target, that's where the information is usually. Target, and then you can look for here, but you don't have to worry about all this stuff. So now we have the form submit. we need to send that information to a database, to basically a API. And here you could actually just grab, let's see, you could console log the state. So you could just say form state, and that will show you basically what it's submitted. So if we clear this and submit again, as you can see, this is what we have. So you have email, motivation, name, position, and terms, which is true. And if we check that, uncheck that, submit again, then the terms is false, all that stuff. So basically, this is what we send into we send in the state to the API, right? So let's use Axios. Axios, let's import it. Is it important for us? It imported for us. Axios, we say Axios. Remember, we always use Axios.get. Now we use Axios.post. And this is how you send a data to somewhere else. So Axios.post, and we'll be using a fake API. So this API is a website where you could send data and it will return that data for you. And what are we sending? So when you say post, it needs two things. It needs first where to send it and what to send, right? So where is this? What? Then what do I send there? And here's what do we need to send? We need to send the state, form state. We send the state to here. Okay, and then you just do your usual stuff, which is .then. And then you return a callback function. So this would be response. Sometimes you see res. So if you see res, means response. Response. And here we just grab the information from the response. So here is where we send the data. Basically, this data, when we send it and send it here, we need to kind of like return it. So this one basically returns the data for us. Basically, it grabs the information and then returns. And we just need to create a basic state to basically grab that information. So let's create a simple fake state. So this is the state where we kind of like grab the information. So we'll call it something like a volunteers. And then we'll call set volunteers. Hopefully that's the spelling. Use the state. This would be just an empty array. So here we just we could console log if we want for now. Response. And we have to do the catch. Never forget the catch. The catch is if the server fails, basically what happens. So the catch here, we have to have a callback function. We could just say console log error. Okay, so that's all we need to do. We could do a lot of things with here. We might add one more thing here, but for now, let's just keep it at that. So now let's go back here, refresh it, add some information here. Let's just add correct information. Mohammed at gmail.com. What would you like to volunteer? Help orphans. And here is when. Okay, what? Okay, so we could just say newsletter or something. Checkbox, and then submit. So when we submit, as you can see, we get 200 status. That means we sent it correctly. So, and as you can see, this database, this server is returning the information for us. You could hear data, and right here when it was created. So automatically, this ResRec server creates a created element for us, which basically shows what time when was created. and then it gives us ID. So this ID is a random ID. It chooses. It might be a like other people are using it, so it gives us a random ID. And this is how we get it back. So now we have sent the data to a database. So that's great. The last thing we need to do is we need to basically validate the data. So validate the information we're sending. Because right now I could just say anything here. Instead of email, I could just say whatever and then send that, and it will still work. And we don't want that. See, say email is whatever. We don't want that. We want to validate so that it doesn't allow the person to send the email, send anything they want here. We want to limit the amount of numbers input here. We want to limit all that. We want to make sure the person has to check before they submit, all that stuff, all the good stuff. And also they have to choose something here before they submit. So we'll do that. Let's take a break. Any question before I move on about the submit or anything else that you're confused about? Anything? It's not easy. React forms are the hardest ones. When I was learning React forms, I actually learned with a component, a package called Formic. This is the one I wanted to teach you guys, but then I realized it's a third party. It's not connected to React, so they could just go out of business anytime. They could disappear anytime. Although they're the biggest, the most famous form system that exists for React. So this basically manages all your form inputs, everything you need to do, all that stuff. It's called Formic. So keep that in mind that this is also another option. If you don't want to do all this handling the submit, if you don't want to do the handle change, it does the handle change for you. And then it also takes care of the validation for you and takes care of the keeping track of errors and issues and everything like that. So that is Formic. This is one of the best. So we'll take a break, 10 minutes, inshallah. We'll come back and then we'll handle validation and a few other things to clear up. I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay. All right, let's finish it up. We're gonna do the validation. Some people are not here, but if they were here, it will help them because the validation is it's a little bit confusing, but not too confusing. It will help them to kind of ask questions if they need to. But let's get to it, inshallah. We have to take care of a couple of things. So we're using a server now, and if this server returns error, we need to handle that error in a way, and also we have to take care of the form because the form right now, if we submit it, it will not clear. We can take care of that. So let's do that quickly. Let's take care of clearing the form, and also this one, yeah. Oh, right here we have to connect it to the state that we created, which is the volunteers. So let's do that. So let's say here, instead of console log, let's say set volunteers, and then give it response data. Okay. And right underneath that, when it sends that information, we need to clear it. And the easiest way to clear it is to set all the values to empty. So basically set the state to initial state. So we do set form state to initial state, which is this one right here. We could do that, or we could just copy this. So this is also same as doing this. So we can copy this and put it right here. So we could do that too. So now whenever we submit it, it will clear the form for us automatically. So now if we submit, yep, as you can see, the form is clear. It goes back to the way it was. All right, so we did that, but we have to take care of any error issues that's come from the server. So this one is optional. We can go through it, or we could just ignore it. So this one is only kind of unique to the server. So we'll skip it so it doesn't confuse you guys. So let's do the normal error handling and validation. So let's do that. So let me introduce you to a package called WEB. It's called the WEB, YUB, npm. WEB is a form validation system or a schema. So it says WEB is a JavaScript schema builder for value parsing and validation. Define a schema and transform the value to match. Basically, schema, if you ever hear schema, it means like a template. So schema is like a template. So we're basically saying this is the type of data that we're expecting the person to send us. So we're building a schema. Other places you will see a schema is a database. So if you ever heard like a database schema, it means like the template of the database, like the table and things like that. Okay, so how does it work? First, we have to install it. So for here, we just call the WEB here. So it adds for us right there. But when you're in your computer, you have to say npm install WEB like that. And then we just import it like this. So basically star means everything. So import everything from WEB and just call it WEB, everything we imported. And then we'll build the schema. So let's do that. So right here, we just say import everything. So when you say everything, it's like that as WEB from WEB. So it's very, very powerful. And also you can see the downloads, how many people download it every week. So this is the weekly downloads. This weekly downloads is 2 million downloads a week, right? So just this week is 2 million. So it's pretty famous. So we need to create a function that validates, not a function, but a schema that validates our data. So right here, we could just create a const, we could say form schema, right? And you could just call this form template or form template expectation or whatever, how you expect the form to be, the name, the email, all that stuff. So here we just say equal to yep dot object. This is how yep is basically set up. I think that the pronunciation is yep, I'm not sure. And then you say that shape. So here basically you're saying, okay, I want yep to basically take care of how the form is going to look like, and I want it to be this shape. So you say that shape, and then you say okay, you give it the shape right here. So we'll give it the shape. So we'll say the name. Okay, the name of the shape of the name, the input name will be yep dot, it will be string. So we're expecting it to be string, not a number. So that's the expectation. And it's also dot, and then you connect it to another dot, and then you say required. And this is also, this input means it's required. So when you put required means it's, you cannot skip it. And then you could just put a message here. If the person leaves it, you could say name is required. Name is required. You could say that. You could put whatever you want here. And then you just go through all the inputs one by one and then build a template for them. So here we say email, we say yep, that we're expecting it to be string. And then also it's an email. And yep already knows how email looks like. So we don't have to specify how email looks like. And this one will be, must be a valid email. And then lastly, we could just say required, right? And all of them, as you can see, these are like methods for this object, the yep object. So these methods, that's how yep works. You could connect all the methods together. Terms, let's say terms is a yep dot bool, a boolean. So it's either true or false. And also we'll say, we'll give it a specific thing, which is called one off. So if you go here to yep, look for one off. One off, let's see. So one off is a mixed dot one off. It's basically, one off is basically, you could have one or the other. So you cannot have both true or false, basically. So one off, and then we say right here, one off true. So here we say true. So that means you could have, you must have the true, basically. You cannot have the false. That's one of the, you basically giving a option. If we put here true and false, we could do that too. So we could say true and false, and then that means you could have either one of them. But this one means you must have true, right? So, and then after that, we just say, if the person leaves it empty, we'll say, please agree with us, right? And we're not going to make it required because it is, this basically says this is required. Yeah, it has to be checked. Position, for the sake of time, we're just going to go a little quicker. We're going to say, yep, that it's a string. So this will be the position. It's just, I think it's the position. What's the position one? I think it's just the information. So it's a string that it's also, yeah, it's the drop down. So we'll say one off, this one too. So you choose from, these are basically the ones that you could choose from. You could add as many inputs as you want here. We could just leave it as just a string, and then it requires to be a string. But the dropdown has a couple of options when it comes to yep. So here it says array of values, okay? Message, string, function, schema, okay. It doesn't give a lot of information about the one-off. So we could just say here, yep, one-off. Let's see. I'm looking for a clear description of what this does. Let's see. It's really not the most important part. You could just say string and you could just skip it that way. And this one will say motivation, and the motivation would be string. So we say yep dot string, and this will be required. And we could just say message if the person leaves it. Must tell us why. Okay, so this is our template basically, that to validate the data that comes through the form. And now nothing will happen because we didn't basically tell the form how to handle this. So what we can do is we can do a couple of things. We can either create within the form, within here. We could just say whenever there's an error, just to show the error here, we could say that. But we have to create a state for the error. So the state for that. So one more state. So here const. So we say error. Just call it error or errors. What did I call it? So errors. So these are multiple errors. So and that's set. So this will keep track of any error. So if there's any error, it just adds to the state, and then basically that's how we show it. So we say here use state, and then here we'll just put the initial state like this one. The initial state is just basically empty object of all the information. So okay, so let's go back to the form. So I'm just thinking of how we can basically put it in a simple way so you guys are not confused about it. So we can say error.email.length is greater than 0. Okay. So, all right, so let's do that. Let's put here right underneath the label, or right before the label. Let's put a JavaScript expression here and say errors, which is the state we just created, dot let's say dot name. Let's go to the name one. Dot name dot length. If the length of the name is greater than 0, basically, if there's anything in there, if there's anything in here, then we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna use a ternary operator. So as I told you, we're gonna use a lot of ternary operators. So if this is true, if there's anything, if there's even a one word or a letter or dot, then we're gonna say, okay, then we'll say check if then we'll say run the error, basically. Either run the error or just don't run the error. So the first one would be, so if this is true, if it's greater than that, then that means this requirement is fulfilled. That means you added something to it. So now we're just gonna say, but if it doesn't, this is what we're gonna render. If there's nothing here and you're trying to submit the form, then here's what we're gonna show. We're gonna say p, and then we're gonna have class name equal to error, and that's what's gonna show. So equal to error, and here is the message that will show. So that will be basically how it's gonna look like. We're gonna have a class called error. So here's gonna be errors.name, and then we're gonna just display the name of the error. Okay, so that is if there is nothing. If there's something, then we'll say So this one is otherwise, just don't show anything. Just say null. Okay. So we could test this. We could save this, and then go here, refresh it, and try to submit the form without adding anything here. Or just click it and click away. Okay, let's see. I don't know why it's not showing. So did I spell everything correctly? Errors dot name dot length. Okay. And then we said, okay, if this is true, then show the error. If not, don't show error. Okay. I think that should be the other way around. And also, let's see. So eventually we have to create a way to handle the errors. So this will be the most confusing part of the whole thing. We have to create a, just like the handle change we created for the form, we have to create a validation change. So if there anything changes, how do we know, how do we target it basically? So we have to create that function, and then we have to put that function in use effect. So let's see. So before we do that, actually, let's put the schema, the validation schema, in a use effect, because we want this to load as soon as the component loads, right? So let's do that. Let's put it in use effect. Okay, use effect, and then just a callback function here. Okay, this is the usual use effect that you guys learned before. All we're doing here is we're gonna call this form schema. We're gonna call this form schema. We're gonna say form schema, and then we're gonna say dot is valid. So this is part of the yup, right? We're basically saying if this is a valid, if there's anything valid here, then we're gonna say, so this is basically, it's asking something. It's saying, okay, what should I check that's valid? So we're saying check the state form state. If this is a valid, then we'll say that, and this is a normal promise, they will say then a callback function, then we'll say valid. That's the information that comes back, the valid information. Then what we could say, we could just, for now, just console log it. So this is not required at all, but it helps us keep track of the errors and issues. So let's say here, let's call it here valid. So people who are not here, this is the part they're missing. It's going to be confusing for them to understand all this. So let's save that, and also we have to give this let's give it the form state. So that will be our, basically this, if anything changes here, then this runs basically. Okay, let's console log that. Let's refresh it. So valid is false. Basically, there's nothing in here. Now, if we add something here, name, still valid is false. Name, okay. Say Muhammad. Still saying valid is false. Okay. Let's see. So whenever state updates validate the entire form, if valid, then change the button to enabled. Okay. So this is definitely not needed right now. So let me not confuse you. Let's just comment out. I'll probably get rid of it for now. The only thing we need now is to make sure that our schema is working with this part. So it's basically showing the error every time we don't add anything to it, right? So let me see if I'm missing anything here. So error.let.name, okay. And then the class name is error paragraph, and then inside it is, oh, okay, I'm missing this. This is supposed to be a, this is an object, okay? And then that, and then otherwise it's null, okay? So let's see, refresh. Try to submit. Leave it, okay. Still not showing anything. Let's see, what am I missing? Handle, we're missing the validation. Okay, 1 second. Okay. So we have to do, we have to validate, every time we change something, we have to keep track of every change, right? So right now there's nothing here. And if we leave it and try to submit, it should give us automatically the error here and say, oh, you didn't add name here. It's required. So now it's not doing it because we're not, the validation schema is not connected to the handle change here. So we have to connect it to the handle change. To do that, we have to create a function for the schema itself so that every time the form changes, it knows what changed. If the input has something in it or not, it knows that. So let's just create that, and then we'll see how we can handle that. So we're just gonna call it something like, let's call it function validate change. Let's call that. We'll give it event. So it's just like a handle change, but this one is for the errors basically. All right. And this one we'll start with, we'll say yep.reach. So this is a method that Yep has. So, so basically we're saying here, get the value out of the schema. So my note I wrote down here, get the value out of the schema at the key value name. So here we'll just add form state, and then we'll say event dot target dot name. So here we're basically saying, okay, go to the state and then grab the go to the, we're saying get the value, and we're targeting the name here, but also we have the state here. So let's see. Okay, and then here, so okay, so we reached here. So this is what we grabbed. We grabbed the name from this state. Then we'll say, okay, so we have the name, but we need to validate that. So to validate it, we'll say validate. We'll say dot validate. So we'll connect to it, just basically just like that. Dot validate. Connect here. Validate. So dot validate, and then we'll validate it. Event dot target that value. So basically, we're checking if the value is there or not, basically. And then after that, we'll connect to another one. We'll say valid. We'll say then we'll say valid here. It's a callback function. So valid. So all this is called a promise. So we're using promise to check if the form has anything in it, basically. And then in here, this is where we basically add the, if that's true, if there's any validation, if there's nothing in the value, there's nothing in it, then the error added to the error state, which we created here. So we'll say set errors, and then we'll say, okay, so set errors, and we have to copy the state, the current state of the errors, and then just add the event dot target dot name, and then set that to empty right here. Okay, so now basically we created a system that checks if there's anything in the form, like if there's any input here. If there is, then it doesn't run. If there is not, then it runs here. The validate change runs. So validate change, we have to put it in the handle change here. so that every time there's change, it runs basically. So let's do that. And also we have to do the catch. We could do it in different ways. So this is a promise. So you have to do your catch here. So here would be error if all the things don't work basically. So this is supposed to be like that. Error. So it'd be console log then the error. Okay, you could do that if you want. So here we're just gonna take this and put it right here and give it the event. So now every time there's a small change, it keeps track of those changes and it says, hey, there is a change. Is it valid? Is it valid information? Then if it is, then it doesn't show you error. If it is, then it shows you the error. Okay, let's put it right there. Let us refresh this. I don't know why it's taking forever. We should finish in a minute. So we'll just do this validation, and when we show the errors, that will be it. Okay. There is an error. Schema.resolve is not a function. Okay. Okay. So I think we misspelled the reach. Let me double check. So reach. Then we put the form schema, not the form state here. Form schema. Okay, event.target.name, and then okay. Hopefully that helps. So this is the confusing part about the validation, but once you understand the validation function, validate change function, and then the schema, and how you have to put that in here in the handle change, and then after that, you create this inline error kind of like login thing, then you'll be good. So let's see. I don't know what's wrong with it. Just a moment. Okay. So here is the name. If we put something, it's good. If we leave it empty, we try to submit. Should show us error. It's not showing us error yet. Let's see. I think we console login. Okay. On name is required. Okay, validation error, name is required. Okay. So we're missing one thing. Let's go back here. Target name, event.target name, then .validate. I think that's a spelling, and then the value, and then .valid. Okay. Okay, valid. If passing validation, clear any errors. Okay. So this basically clears errors basically for us if it passes. Okay. And then we're missing one more thing. We have to set the errors if failed validation error in state. Okay. So here is clearing it basically. This is not, it's not setting the errors to state. It's if there is no error, then it clears the error for us. But also we have to put the, if it fails, you have to put it in the catch, right? So let's do that. So in the catch here, you have to do this. So let's do that. So here we could console log the error if we want. And also we have to do one more parenthesis. So here we say set errors, and then we copy the state errors, and here we'll set the event.target.name to the error, right? So we'll say error dot, we could just call this error. We could make it short because we have too many errors. So this would be error dot errors. This will be our state, and then we'll grab the first one, the first error, basically. So if we save that, what problem we have in here? Okay. Okay, there's an issue with the post. 404 not allowed. What do they mean by that? Okay. I think the setup is fine. Have the error here, errors, everything looks good. Event.target, errors here. We can cancel log error here if we want. Okay. Not sure why this is not working. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work well, this thing. So let's open it here itself. Okay. So that's good. If we leave it empty, it should show us the error. So that's what I was looking for. Basically right now, if we leave it empty, it will not, we can submit, but it still gives us the error. And also we can make this disabled until all the requirements are met. So now if we add something to it, it says okay, otherwise it says no. So you have to add a name to it. And remember where we get that from and how do we set that up? Right here. We said, okay, if the name is required, if it's not fulfilled, then give this message. Now we could just add the rest right now. So for the name, we added this. You could just replace this. You could put this in any of this. So like here, we just put another error and we say here it's going to be an email. Here's going to be an email. Right now, if we save it, so if we save it and we must be an email, see? So while you type in, it actually tells you. And when you type it as an email, it gets rid of the error, right? So that was the only confusing part. Other than that, you just copy and paste this this error. So that's how you show error. Otherwise, the form will not be submitted, basically. And here we'll change it to motivation. And remember, this is all in the errors state. So we created a state for the errors. And one more thing, two more things. So here we just change it to positions. And here the last one is the checkbox. So put it right here, checkbox, and we could, it has a name terms, right? Terms. So now if we save all this and we refresh this, if we check, it says, so it says this must be a Boolean, but the final value was on. Okay, so I don't remember where we put the on. Okay, I think we eventually have to make this this false, right? Okay. Oh no, that's keep it empty here. Let's see. So server post. So here, okay, so the terms Boolean on of true, okay. Please agree with us. So maybe the schema we didn't correctly put it in here. True. on off, true. Okay. I mean, that's how it should be. I'm not sure where it's getting from. Okay. Let's see. Let me just double check. Okay, on. Terms. Okay. So yeah. So terms, when we check it, it gives us that information, but I double checked it before. Didn't have that information. All right. So the main thing is just it works now, but it shows that message. It shouldn't show that message. Or type, I think I misspelled type. This must be a Boolean type. Okay. Yeah, I spelled the correct Boolean. Let me double check that. Okay. Boolean, true. Everything looks good here. And when we're doing the here, so it's event.type, the checkbox. The checkbox or checked box? Yeah, checkbox. Everything looks good. I don't see any issues. We just have to make sure that if we don't do this, then it says must tell us why. This way you could choose any of these. So everything works fine. Just there's a small error here. Any question? I know it's confusing, but inshallah, maybe we can go over it again one more time, the validation. Do maybe a little more review. But the main thing you need to understand is the WEB. This is how you set up the schema. And then you have to create a function that checks if anything changed, and then checks if it's same as the schema. So here, this is a promise basically. So it's saying go to the schema function, and then grab the event.target.name, which is the input name, and then validate the value. Basically, check if there's a value. If there is a value, then go ahead and validate it. So no error. Don't set the state to the error state anything. So we have error state here, right here. So basically keep it empty. If not, if there is an error, then set the state to the first error that you have, which is basically the error for each form input. Any question?
معلم, in case if you, let's say if we want to create another component and want to render the form that one, like which part goes to that component, like separately, in case.
So you want to render the form in another component?
Yeah, remember the way we used to do a couple times?
Yeah, the props, sending props.
Yeah. So for example, like the forms right now, we have a lot of code down here. So in case if you want to separate them, which one goes there? Like which part?
So you could separate them by you could separate this function to another component. So each function can be separated, and then you will just pass the function as a prop, right? So remember how we did first time we were doing form? We had like a function here that was adding the information to the state, and then we pass that function to the form. So just like that, you could pass this function validate to another component. So all these functions can be passed in other components. Also, this schema can be passed to the state can be passed. If you want to, so the inputs are just basically HTML. So there's no way to pass them as a prop because they're not a function. They're not a variable of any kind. They're not a array or a object. So they're just a HTML methods, HTML elements. So what you could do is you could just copy, put them somewhere else, and then render that component here, and then pass it all the things it needs, like the form submit function, it needs the handle change function, things like that, and then validate change function. So you could pass all the functions there, and then you could just do the same thing you're doing now over there. So that's one way you could do it. Anything else you, I mean, I'm sure there's a little confusing about this part. I'll go over it again. I'll try to do maybe like tomorrow, maybe like 30 minutes sit down to explain more and practice, maybe show you another example, inshallah.
Start Duran. You know, sometimes what happened to me is when I'm working with React,
Yeah,
and I have to delete like the chroma. They got some problem.
yeah,
When you do something like it's gonna catch something,
yeah,
you know. So you
yeah,
have to delete, deeply delete. So otherwise, you will get the, you know, always it will tell you that there's a problem. You have to delete, deeply delete, cleaning
yeah,
in the browser. So
yeah.
sometimes it helped me that.
Yeah, I mean, I used this code sandbox, but I could maybe tomorrow, inshallah, I'll try to do the normal React. So we'll do the normal editor. We use VS Code and just install the whole React there, and then do everything from
Okay.
scratch. So this website has some issues sometimes.
I don't use this. I don't use this website.
Yeah,
It's complicated. So for me,
it's
to be honest,
yeah, it's easier for like presentation so that I can
yeah,
share with you right now. So I can
yeah.
share this code, send it just like this link, and then you just get all this code. But
Okay.
yeah, it's only good for presentation, not for like development. Yeah. So how's it going? How's everything going for you?
To be honest, it's fine. Ramadan is here, and I'm I'm doing my best.
Oh,
I'm
mashallah,
trying.
mashallah.
I do a lot of projects